Alrighty, what's up, everybody? Meteorologist Will Haney here. We are going to jump right in to a little weather discussion on your Saturday night. If you regularly tune in to us just by chance on our secondary channel, now titled The Arc, which used to be the CW, we are not on there anymore on Saturdays, at least for now, for 10 o'clock. So with this extra time, I figured I would hop on here and do a quick discussion on the snow moving in tonight. And of course, that storm system that we're watching for Tuesday, Wednesday, and then also talking about some potential cold set to arrive later this week. So if you just give me a few more seconds, I'm just going to share this really quickly to my page. Sorry about the background noise. Let me try if I try and mute this. More seconds. I'm just going to share this really quickly. What the heck? That was probably really annoying. I'm sorry. There's probably a weird echo. Didn't know the audio was going to go. So let me just see 1 second. Of course, it's being difficult. Facebook, I swear, always throws a different curveball. All right, I am seeing your comments, which is great. Sally, Jaden, good evening, Gwen. Good evening, Orlo. What's up, everybody? All right, this will just take me 1 second now that I'm where I need to be. All right. All right. So first things first, the snow tonight. We saw a little bit off and on snow throughout much of the day today, but as we know, it didn't really amount to much. We're going to see another kind of batch of snow very similar to that overnight through early tomorrow morning, and really throughout the first half of tomorrow. What's up, Ben in Vicksburg, Ben Richmond, weather aficionado. What's up, Ben? And Stacy, good evening to you as well. So we're already seeing this next batch of snow starting to push in. You can see it's pretty prominent here as we look at the regional view. There's one little disturbance still that's kind of spinning through our area. Generally speaking, I think this is not going to amount to much in the way of additional accumulations, which I'll get to here in just a second. So this is kind of a non-event as far as impacts, I think, or at least significant impacts. You know, generally speaking, I think it's less than a half an inch. There's a very low chance that up along I-96, as you see this latest projection, some could see up to about an inch. But I think even that is kind of wishful thinking. That would likely be to a little bit of some enhancement coming off of Lake Michigan in a west-northwest wind by tomorrow morning and into the early afternoon. But I generally think this is less than about a half an inch, at least tonight through early tomorrow morning. So again, this is the next 24 hours. Emphasis on that, because some of you are probably tuning in. You've probably been staying up to date with our forecast for this system on the way this week. This is not, by the way, our only opportunity for any sort of snow or winter weather in the week ahead. It's actually multiple chances, which we'll touch on here in just a moment. But first, let's look ahead at this next weather maker for Tuesday and Wednesday. But specifically, I think some of the worst impacts, if we see them, are going to be Tuesday morning, which we've been telling you about for some time now, that potential for some snow to spread in Monday into Tuesday. I will say, just right off the bat, this system is trending more towards a rain event than it is a significant snow event. And I'll explain some of why here in just a second. So the lows track, we now have a little bit better of a grasp on. Generally speaking, when we're like 5, 6, 7 days out, we get a general idea of patterns, temperatures, for example. We might have a general idea of if we're going to be well above average temperature-wise, well below average. But when it comes down to the nitty-gritty of storm tracks, 5, 6, 7 days out, it's not necessarily a guessing game. We have a general idea of maybe where a system is going to be progressing through part of the country. But when it comes down to the specific storm track, it's really hard to nail it down that early in advance. Now you start getting to like maybe the 4 or 5 day range. We can have a little bit better of an idea, but there's still plenty of time for that system to shift its trajectory. Now that we're about 3 days out, and I'll kind of explain why this is here a little later, we generally start to see a little bit better consensus in some of our weather models on a system's track or trajectory. So we're starting to see that, and the low track puts this area of low pressure through kind of central Illinois and then eventually clips southern Lake Michigan. So what that does is it brings some wet snow initially, but then switches things over pretty quickly, I think, by Tuesday, maybe around late morning, early afternoon, especially along and south of I-94, to more of just a rain. Now, this is not going to be a freezing rain or really a sleet scenario. The environment just doesn't really look that favorable for that, which is not a bad thing. But it's just the fact that we're going to see likely a few inches of wet snow in the early morning, transitioning very quickly into rain by Tuesday afternoon into the evening. That low will quickly push off to the north and east into early Wednesday. With that, we'll wrap some slightly colder air behind it, but it doesn't look like the system is going to tap into some real true Arctic air, a system later this week, May. And so with that, I think we could see a brief switchover again, believe it or not, back to snow. But this one, I think on the back end, shouldn't do much as far as additional accumulation or impact. Now, one thing, if you noticed from that thing I just showed you there, that graphic, let me do this and make it a little bit bigger. And I can actually go back in time. I'm going to go back just briefly, so don't get thrown off guard. We're going to go back in time. Back to the future style. Okay, so reverse. There we go. So this is 1 o'clock Tuesday. Notice how that rain snow line is pushing north at that point. And then certainly by about 4 o'clock, it's probably setting up closer to about Grand Rapids or possibly even north of there. But what's interesting, right, is north of Grand Rapids, if you're up towards, say, Newaygo County, for example, or Mecosta County, Montcalm County, you're going to stay, I think, predominantly snow throughout the really duration of the event. That rain snow line is going to kind of pivot slightly, but north of Grand Rapids is likely to get some decent snow out of the system because they're not going to see that same switch over to mostly rain as you see there. So by like late Tuesday, most of us are seeing rain by that point. And then there's that back half kind of switch over as I was talking about. So there's some of the key points. I think our best chance for a few inches of accumulation is probably Tuesday morning. We'll get to kind of the spread of some projection here in just a second. But then generally, I think it's mostly rain by Tuesday afternoon into the evening. Now, if this system had trended slightly farther east or slightly farther, specifically southeast in its trajectory, this could have been a really significant snow event for us, which is why we were kind of alerting you to that potential a few days ago. And I think, if you've been following us, if you've been reading some of the things we've put out, we've been emphasizing that there is a lot of uncertainty when we were 5-6 days out. But we try to give you a heads up if there's a potential for a very impactful winter system. We try to alert you of that well ahead of time so you can just kind of keep an eye on it and possibly, think about your plans. And so now, that we're getting closer to it, I think Tuesday morning is the time frame to watch. So we look at the precipitation timeline with this. It's a wet snow, I think likely starting overnight Tuesday into overnight Monday into early Tuesday. And then it's going to be predominantly rain, snow throughout much of the day and almost more of a rain. I should almost tweak this graphic, I think, to show that it's mainly rain. And then towards the end of it, switching over to more snow. Maybe a better visualization of this would be this graphic, which I'm kind of going between. Maybe you guys can let me know which one you like better. But this one kind of hammers it down a little bit more in detail. So what I'm going for here is like Kalamazoo and I-94. So if you're in Kalamazoo County or counties along and south of I-94, the snow is going to start a little bit earlier for you. There will be a brief window of more of a rain snow mix, and then switching over to predominantly rain throughout much of the event. So probably by late morning, early afternoon on Tuesday, we're going to have mostly rain. And then towards the back end, a brief switch over back to snow. But again, that won't amount to much. Now, if you're in Grand Rapids or farther north, that snow will start, or the snow's onset will be a little later. And with that, I think it could actually linger a little bit longer into the early afternoon, and then it will switch over to rain. But I think the window of rain for Grand Rapids is maybe a little shorter. And with that, I wouldn't be shocked if Grand Rapids maybe sees a little bit more snow out of this than, say, Kalamazoo, which you're going to see that here reflected in just a second when I show this, the projected snowfall. So this is two different weather models' takes on it. But you can see when I was talking about how our weather models have come into like pretty good consensus, it's not perfect. There's still a little bit of I wouldn't say disagreement, but there's still a little bit of a range as far as what they're suggesting, although you can see it here. So this is the GFS model, which is operated by NOAA or the National Weather Service, but the American model, as we sometimes call it, versus the European model. And you can see here, generally speaking, they're in some pretty decent agreement. So they're showing most of our viewing area along and south of I-96, I think, should end up probably in that 1 to 3. But what's interesting is you notice they also depict a little area of those darker blues of like 3 to 6. Now, I will say, I think those darker blues south of I-94, I don't think we're going to see 6 inches down there. I think it's probably more like 3 to 4. But it's a little tricky because farther north, I do think if you're in that blue in like southern Newaygo County, portions of Muskegon County, Mecosta, Montcalm counties, you could end up in that 3 to 6 inch range. So it's a little tricky because my blue kind of means two different things. But yeah, farther south, I think maybe up to like 4 inches at best if you're along the Michigan-Indiana line. If you're farther north, though, that's where it gets interesting, right? So we quickly ramp up to about 6+ inches, I think potentially in like northern Newaygo County, Oceana counties, and farther north especially. So that's really where the heaviest wet snow is going to fall. Grand Rapids is another interesting part of this, right? So if you see, that's another big difference right now, at least, in the American model on the left versus the European model on the right. So the European model does include Grand Rapids, at least in some of the latest data, in potentially a little bit more of a heavy wet snow. The biggest thing is going to be the driver of whether or not Grand Rapids gets hit hard versus not is how far north that rain snow line lifts during the daytime. My thinking is it'll probably set up like almost right on top of Grand Rapids, if not slightly farther north. So I would almost lean more towards the American model personally, which would be a little bit less significant of an event in Grand Rapids. Now, that being said, what we'll watch for is specifically where that rain snow line sets up. That's going to be kind of the $1 million thing on Tuesday. And then also just, how long of snow we get in the morning before things switch over to rain. Those are still the two things that even now we're going to have to fine tune. Again, this is still 48 hours out. So we're still going to be fine tuning somewhat. But what I will say is those are the two big things that we're still ironing out, is exactly where that rain snow line sets up. And then also how long and when exactly that snow starts. Tuesday morning is another big one before things switch over to rain, because those are really going to be two huge things that will be determinant in how much snow we see, at least before things switch over to rain. So again, if you're looking at this, I know that blue is labeled as 3 to 6, but if you're farther south, I think it's more of like up to maybe 4 inches. The 3 to 6, the true 3 to 6 is probably farther north. So I know that's a little confusing. It's kind of hot. It's a complex thing because we're getting two kind of waves of snow. The first one's going to be initially in the morning, and then there's going to be kind of additional heavy wet snow that continues into the later evening, and even through probably early Wednesday farther north. Good evening, Cody in Grand Rapids. Sorry I haven't been reading the comments. Wilson, my man, heading to bed. Blessings, Wilson. I hope you have a good night, my friend, and we'll see you on here soon. Rocky, good evening. How am I doing this Saturday? I'm doing well. Thanks, Rocky. I thought you meant like, how am I doing this? Like, how am I doing this? I was like, well, the internet, streaming, it's fun. Yeah. All right. So let's talk about some other things just really quickly. So that's Tuesday morning. I hope that's okay. Peggy, I know. Peggy is asking about our 10 o'clock newscast. Yeah. So our 10 o'clock newscast, unfortunately, right now, at least for right now, due to some staffing things, we don't have our regularly scheduled 10 o'clock newscast on the ARC, but we will be on at 11. And hopefully we'll get that 10 o'clock back to you soon. It's just on Saturday nights. It's kind of a bummer, but it gives me more time to do this. So our upper level setup though, for this week. So this big dip in the jet stream that you see right there, that big bullseye, right, over us on Tuesday, that's the dip in the jet stream that's driving the weather that we're going to see Tuesday and Wednesday, the system, right? So supported by a pretty decent shot of cold. But later this week, things get a little bit more interesting. So the jet takes a much bigger cut out of the northern U.S. Basically, if we were to follow this from up towards Montana down into Kansas City, Missouri, Illinois, and then eventually the Great Lakes, that's going to be a shot of some pretty Arctic air. Our first real shot of, I think, pretty significant cold that we haven't really seen so far this season. We could be talking easily, I think, highs possibly in the like lower 20s. We could have possibly some single digit temperatures. Wouldn't be out of the question for some morning lows, I think, in the range of specifically closer to the middle of the month. So this is sort of setting up into next weekend and then the following week. This is a possible cold air outbreak. In fact, the Climate Prediction Center seems very confident that we'll have our first kind of cold air outbreak of the season. So some pretty significant Arctic air spreading in across the northern U.S., and that does include eventually the Great Lakes in that range of about January 14th to the 20th. So with that, I think it's likely that we'll see a snowier pattern as well. I think it's also likely we could even have some lake effect in the mix at times. But it's just still too early to say exactly. Now, what I will say is there are some models kind of hinting at a storm possibly Friday into Saturday of next week. But like I said, it's still all across the board as far as the possible scenarios for next weekend, because we still have a few weather systems between now and then. So with every weather system, right, that's like throwing a curveball at the weather models, right? So that's another thing for them to compute, another thing for them to take into account. So the more active our pattern is almost leading up to that next weekend, we're unlikely to see a lot of consensus right now, which we're really not. But I will say there is a chance we could see additional accumulations next weekend, and that's another time frame we are watching. But right now we're just kind of, I think, getting through this Tuesday system. Now you will see snow chances continue into Wednesday. That's, again, very light snow. I don't really expect much in the way of accumulations on Wednesday, and most of that will happen, I think, in the early part of the day. Thursday, another snow chance, similar story. I think it's a week, maybe up to about an inch of snow. And then we do highlight Friday and Saturday as just a time frame to watch right now. As of now, it seems like late Friday into Saturday could see another round of some snow and possibly some accumulating snow at that. So that's something else we're just kind of keeping on the back burner for now. But right now, again, we're just seeing that snow pushing its way on in, and I'll just circle back in case you missed it off the top. But if you're looking at interactive radar on our Weather Alert Network app, if you don't have it, it is a great resource. You're probably seeing the snow pushing in. Again, this is not the big kahuna by any means. This is just some light snow that's going to be moving through, similar to what we had throughout much of the day. This will push through tonight through early tomorrow morning. You can see it there to the southwest. Decent amount of precipitation, but it should not amount to much in the way of additional snow. Probably up to about a half an inch is what we're thinking as far as potential accumulations between now and, say, about noon tomorrow. You can see it there spreading in. By daybreak tomorrow, most of us are going to wake up to some snowflakes coming down, and then it gradually ends into the afternoon. Peg is prepared. She has the shovel out and umbrella. It seems it's going to be one of those days, Peg. It's going to be messy in the morning. It's going to be slushy. It's going to be gross. And then it's going to all melt probably by the end of the day because it's going to rain all day. And then we'll see more snow on the back end, but not probably shovelable. So it's kind of weird. All right. Peggy, hopefully I answered your question. We'll be back soon. Shannon, good evening. I hope you enjoy your night as well. Yeah, Sarah's hoping for a snow day for the kids. I know. I think a lot of us are. I don't know. I think all of us are kind of in some way, even if you're a snow hater, I think maybe deep down there's a part of you that is like, it feels weird in January to not really have much snow. So I think there are a lot of us that are kind of like ready for that first big snow. I don't really think this is going to be it. It'll be interesting to see Tuesday morning, how bad it is initially, but I think by Tuesday afternoon, impacts are going to be pretty negligible, or it's going to be pretty much all rain by that point. So it's going to be tricky. It'll be a weird, like if they were to call delayed starts or like cancel school, it's going to be weird because I would think by like lunchtime and certainly into the afternoon, conditions will have improved pretty easily. So we'll see. Sally saying, hi, Betty. Shout out, friend shout out right there. Ben Richmond, what is my personal favorite overall GFS radio? Oh man, Ben, I could go on a long time for that. Oh man, Ben, we'll have to do a phone call sometime. But traditionally Euro, in my experience, I kind of like a little bit better in like the 3 to 5 day range. And I had always heard murmurings that, it was like a little bit more accurate in that range, but they made a lot of improvements to the American a few years ago that I think it has gotten better. Forecasting here, it's hard to say like whether one or the other always wins out. I more just look at sometimes which one has been a little bit more consistent run to run versus one or the other. So I don't necessarily have a favorite. I will say, Ben, as you probably know, the HER has been nailing some of our lake effect events as of late. So that's been interesting. Ben is a fellow weather junkie like myself, so I could talk a long time about things that Ben is asking about. Rocky, how long are you going to be not broadcasting? I don't know, unfortunately, right now, Rocky, but hopefully we will be back soon. Ron, the ARC, if you got CW, it should still be the same. But it shouldn't, I guess you couldn't get the CW then, which is a bummer. But once we're back, you can also stream us on our website. Fun fact. The greens, oranges, and yellows are red. Corey Perry is rooting for the dip in the jet stream. Thanks, Karen. I'm just reading through some stuff. Just changed the oil in the snow blower. Ready for anything to come our way, Brian. What a guy. Yeah, Tina says she doesn't want the freezing rain mess. Now, fortunately, I don't really think this is going to be a freezing rain scenario. I think it's going to be more a pretty quick snow to rain switch over. So that's one good thing is we're not looking at like a freezing rain or a sleet setup with this system. Cynthia, make it stop. Sorry, Cynthia. Richard, hello. All right. I'm going to wrap this up, I think, because I had some stuff pulled up. Let's see. How quick can I do this? How quick can I do it? Okay. You guys ready? Look at this. Fancy. All right. So this is College of DuPage. Great website if you're a weather nerd, such as Ben or myself. But this is water vapor satellite imagery. It's kind of a cool tool. It's used to look at, for me, really jet stream patterns, little something called shortwave troughs. One thing that's just kind of cool here, can you see my mouse? You can. That's helpful. Okay. See this little swirly guy over Kansas right now? That is somewhat of the little trough that's driving our weather right now. So that's kicking this little batch of snow our way. Now, the reason why I wanted to show this and the reason why we're starting to get better consensus from the weather models, which is to be expected, is because the system that's going to bring our winter weather on Tuesday into Wednesday, some snow switching to rain, is now out over the West Coast, essentially. It's now over kind of the Sierra Nevadas, pushing in right here. So if you can see my cursor, you can. So if you see this little guy dipping down here, that's that dip in the jet stream. That's the trough. And then there's a lot of moisture in the high levels of the atmosphere, technically, but kind of over the desert Southwest. So this is the system that's eventually bringing our weather for Tuesday and Wednesday. Why am I talking about this? Well, first of all, because it's towards the end of the video, and I like to share things like this. But the reason why I'm talking about this is because when systems now move over land, we can sample them a lot better. What does that mean? Well, it means we can launch weather balloons. It means there's a lot more surface weather data being taken from that system. And why is that important? Because the more that we're able to sample a weather system, the better our output is going to be from the weather models. So that's why when we start talking, 5, 6, 7 days out, usually A weather system, or the dip in the jet stream that's going to bring our weather at that range, is usually out over the Pacific Ocean. Well, guess what? The Pacific Ocean, we can sample things from satellite. We can sample things from very, very limited buoys. But we can't really sample them nearly as well as when they're over land. And so with that, our weather models start to get a much better grasp on what's going to happen in the future, because they're able to, again, tap into a lot more data from ground observations, from weather balloon observations. So yeah, that's your little weather nugget of the day. It's called sampling, and we're able to better sample that system. And that's why, generally speaking, usually maybe like 3-4 days out, we start to get a lot better of a consensus from the weather models. Hopefully you found that interesting. And if you didn't, you're like, why is this guy still talking? I'm sorry, but that's what you signed up for. Okay. Houston, there is still 10 o'clock news. We're airing the national desk right now, which is national news. But it will eventually come back. We're just working on some hiring right now for an anchor. But yeah, if you know anybody that's looking for a weekend anchor job, send them my way. But yeah, we're going to be back eventually once we can get a little bit of some staffing stuff figured out. I really appreciate you, Mike Lewis. All right, I'm going to sign off because I do have to run in. We are going to be on for the 11 on News Channel 3. So I know it's a little late for some of us with maybe earlier bedtime, but yeah, we're going to be on at 11 here in about 20 minutes. So tune in for that, and I will see you there. And I really appreciate everybody for all the comments, for listening to me ramble for like 27 minutes about weather and all this stuff coming our way this week. All right. God bless you too, Cody. I appreciate that, man. I hope you have a good evening as well. Happy Saturday, everybody. And I'll probably do another one of these tomorrow night, by the way. It's still could tweak. Things could still shift a little bit regarding Tuesday, Wednesday. But if anything, my personal leaning is I think it's going to go towards more rain versus more snow. But we'll see, so just stay tuned just in case anything changes dramatically. All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye.